Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are wrestling with a topic that usually gets relegated to fortune cookies or maybe those late-night existential crises.
Oh, yeah.
But we are going to treat it like the high-stakes mechanical problem it actually is.
I like that.
We are talking about luck. We're talking about tragedy. And specifically, we are asking a question that I think keeps a lot of us up at night.
Mm-hmm.
Is my life actually under my control? Or am I just, dodging falling pianos until one finally hits me?
It's the ultimate question, isn't it? It's that tension between I am the captain of my soul and I am a leaf in the wind.
Exactly. And to help us navigate this, we are diving into a book that is, quite frankly, beautiful, but also incredibly challenging. It's called Wisdom and Destiny by Maurice Maeterlinck.
It is.
Now, I have to admit, when I first saw the title, I thought, okay, this sounds a little woo-woo.
I could see that.
It sounds like something I'd find in the New Age section next to crystal healing.
The title definitely has a certain loftiness to it, for sure.
Huh? Right. But then you start reading and you realize this isn't fluff. This is a rigorous, almost ruthless examination of human character. Maeterlinck was a Belgian playwright and poet writing around the turn of the 20th century, 1898 to be exact. Mm-hmm. And he has a very specific reputation, doesn't he?
He does. And to really understand the weight of this book, you have to understand who Maeterlinck was before he wrote it. He was known as the Belgian Shakespeare, but like Shakespeare of the shadows.
Right.
He wrote these symbolist plays like Pelleas and Melisande.
We are not exactly comedies.
Far from it, no. They are full of fog, ancient crumbling castles, pale people whispering in dark corridors, and this overwhelming sense of doom.
Okay.
In his early work, destiny was this monster. It was a predator. You couldn't escape it. You just sort of waited for it to eat you. The critics called him a decadent, a man obsessed with death.
So he's the goth kid of the 19th century literary scene.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
But then something shifts. He writes Wisdom and Destiny, and it's like he steps out of a cave and into the sunlight. In the text, he actually describes this transition. He says he's moving from the green, calm canals of his homeland in Flanders, which are beautiful but, stagnant,
right,
to the broad river of life. He stops looking at life through this veil of mystic poetry and starts looking at it through the lens of a moral philosopher. And the biggest surprise, he's not gloomy anymore.
That was the shocker for me. He's incredibly cheerful. But it's not a naive cheerfulness. It feels
earned. It's earned, yes.
He wants us to be happy, but he realizes that to be happy, we have to settle this beef between the two characters in the title. Wisdom and destiny?
Right, and he frames it almost like a boxing match, or perhaps a territorial war. On one side, you have destiny.
Let's define that, because destiny is such a loaded word.
It is. So in the context of this book, destiny is the external force. It's the huge shadow that hangs over the valley. It's the things you cannot predict and you cannot stop.
Okay.
The car accident, the cancer diagnosis, the economy crashing, the hurricane. It's the why me factor.
Yeah. The common view, and I think I'm guilty of this too, is that destiny is the boss. It's this blind giant that crushes us, and we just have to hope it misses.
Precisely. We view ourselves as victims of this external power. But Maeterlinck's central thesis, and this is where he starts to ruffle some feathers, is that we give destiny way too much credit. He argues that what we call fatality or bad luck is often just a disguise.
A disguise for what?
For us. For our own character, for our own ignorance. He posits that destiny only reigns where there is no wisdom. They are inversely proportional. As wisdom rises, destiny recedes.
Okay, I'm going to push back on this immediately, because this sounds a little bit like victim blaming.
It can sound that way at first, yes.
If I walk out of this studio and a brick falls off the building and hits me in the head, are you or Maeterlinck telling me that's my fault? That I lack the wisdom to dodge a brick?
And that is the crucial distinction. Maeterlinck is not talking about magic. He's not saying a wise man has a force field.
Right.
He uses a very specific analogy to explain this relationship, and it's the analogy of the stream.
Walk me through the stream.
Okay, picture a hillside. We're standing at the top looking down. There are two streams of water starting at the exact same elevation. They both have to gravity feed down to a lake at the bottom.
Okay.
The terrain is identical for both. The destiny of the geography is the same. There are rocks, there are roots, there are sudden drops.
Okay, so the obstacles, the brick falling or the terrain, they're fixed.
Right. Now look at the first stream. It's a disaster. It hits a rock and foams up. It gets muddy. It gets trapped in a pool and becomes stagnant. It rips up the earth. It looks like it's fighting a war against the mountain. It arrives at the lake dirty and turbulent. That is a person who is oppressed by events.
And the second stream?
The second stream faces the exact same rocks, the exact same roots. But when it hits a rock, it flows around it. It slips through the roots. It deepens its channel to maintain its speed.
It adapts.
It adapts. It reaches the lake clear and calm. The external destiny, the rock, was the same for both. But the moral destiny, the experience of the journey, was completely different because of the inner force of the water.
So the rock is the event. We can't move the rock. But the water is our consciousness.
Exactly. Maeterlinck is saying that while you cannot control the brick falling, you control the texture of the collision. To the unwise man, that brick is a tragedy that proves the universe hates him.
Right. He takes it personally.
He becomes bitter. He screams at the sky. He lets the physical injury become a spiritual injury. To the sage, the brick is, well, it's a brick. It hurts. It requires medical attention. But it does not enter the inner refuge of his soul. It doesn't make him question the value of life itself.
For wisdom doesn't stop the rain, but it builds a waterproof roof over your psychology.
That is a perfect way to put it. And that leads us to the definition of the protagonist in this story, wisdom. Because if wisdom is the thing that protects us, we need to know what it is. And Maeterlinck is very clear that it is not just being smart.
Yeah, we all know people who are brilliant, high IQ. Maybe they're literal rocket scientists, but their lives are a train wreck.
Exactly.
They're miserable, they're petty, they're constantly in conflict. So clearly, raw intellect isn't the shield.
No. Maeterlinck defines wisdom as a compound. It is intellect plus love or intellect plus consciousness. He uses the analogy of the lamp.
Wisdom is the lamp of love. I highlighted that line. But I have to ask, why love? That feels like a generic be nice answer. Usually when I think of love, I think of passion, irrationality, making bad decisions because you're infatuated. That seems like the opposite of wisdom.
And that's a fair point. He's not talking about romantic infatuation. He's talking about connection, about a kind of universal empathy. Think of the lamp, the structure of the lamp, the brass, the glass, the wick. That is your intellect. That's your knowledge, your reason.
Okay, the hardware.
The hardware, exactly. But the oil is love. It's the desire to understand others, to feel connected to humanity, to forgive. It's the fuel.
And without the oil.
Without the oil, the lamp is just a piece of cold metal in the dark. You can be the smartest cynic in the world. You can analyze everything perfectly. But if you have no love, no oil, you cast no light.
So you can't see.
You cannot see the world clearly because you are isolated from it. Wisdom, for Maeterlinck, is the light that allows you to spot the rocks in the stream and navigate them with grace.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, the sage isn't someone who knows all the answers. The sage is someone whose lamp is burning so brightly that they don't trip over the furniture of life.
Precisely. And this light allows the sage to distinguish between external destiny, which we submit to, like the weather, and moral destiny, which we control absolutely.
This distinction is what sets up the next section of the book, which I found to be the most entertaining.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Maeterlinck decides to put on his literary critic hat. He looks at the great tragedies of Western literature, Hamlet, Oedipus, King Lear, and he basically says, these people are idiots.
It is a wonderful takedown. He poses a question, why do we never see a sage as the protagonist of a tragedy?
Because it would be a boring play.
Well, yes, but why would it be boring? Maeterlinck's argument is that fatality only reigns where there is no wisdom. If you drop a sage into the plot of Hamlet, the play falls apart in Act 1.
Let's play this out, because Hamlet is usually held up as this deep philosophical thinker, you know, the to be or not to be guy. But Maeterlinck isn't impressed.
Not at all. Maeterlinck says Hamlet is intellectual, certainly. He's neurotic, but he is not wise. He operates on fanatical impulse. He sees a ghost who tells him to kill his uncle, and he accepts that premise immediately. There's no critical thought there.
So Maeterlinck proposes this thought experiment. Imagine Jesus at Elsinore. Or imagine Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, in Hamlet's place.
It's a brilliant image. Visualize the scene. It's midnight on the ramparts. The ghost of the father appears wailing for revenge. Hamlet, the unwise, freaks out and vows murder.
Right.
Now, swap him for Jesus. Or a sage. What happens?
I imagine the sage looks at the ghost and says, you seem upset.
Exactly. Or, I can see you were suffering, spirit. But murder, revenge, that is beneath us. That will only create more suffering for everyone. The sage would go to the uncle, Claudius, and instead of seeing a monster, he would see a sad, broken man driven by greed and fear.
And he wouldn't drive Ophelia to suicide.
No, he would comfort her. He would explain what was happening with kindness. The sage paralyzes destiny. The web of lies, the madness, the poisoning. It all relies on everyone reacting blindly and emotionally.
It does, yeah.
As soon as you introduce consciousness wisdom, the tragedy evaporates. It becomes, at most, a very difficult family meeting.
That is hilarious and also deeply true. The drama we crave in fiction and often in our own lives is usually just a celebration of bad decision-making.
It is a celebration of blindness. Maeterlinck says a sage raises those around him. If Jesus is at Elsinore, Polonius doesn't get stabbed behind a curtain. The mere presence of wisdom changes the chemical composition of the events.
He does the same thing with Oedipus. No, poor Oedipus. I feel like I have to defend him. The guy didn't know.
He didn't.
He killed his dad and married his mom, but he did it unknowingly. That feels like pure external destiny. He got pricked by the universe.
Maeterlinck agrees that the events were external. Oedipus walked into a trap set by the gods. But how did he react when he found out?
He gouged his eyes out.
He gouged his eyes out. He screamed. He felt polluted. He accepted the idea that because he had made a mistake in ignorance, his soul was now black. Maeterlinck asks, is that true?
Is it?
Maeterlinck says no. If Oedipus had been truly wise, if he had an inner refuge, he would have felt terrible sorrow, unimaginable grief. But he would not have believed that an accidental act destroyed his moral worth. He would have realized that his soul was still clean because his intentions were never evil.
So the tragedy wasn't sleeping with his mother. The tragedy was that he wasn't strong enough to handle the truth of it without destroying himself.
Precisely. The blinding was a choice. It was a failure of wisdom, not a requirement of destiny.
This shifts the blame significantly. It suggests that we are co-authors of our own disasters, which is empowering but also terrifying.
It is.
And that leads us to the heaviest part of the book, the part about justice. Because we all want the universe to be just, right? We want the good guys to win and the bad guys to lose.
We're wired for it. But Maeterlinck calls this expectation the great disillusionment. We grow up, we look at the world, and we realize nature doesn't care.
Right.
Gravity doesn't care if you're a saint or a murderer. If you fall off a cliff, you die. The economy doesn't care if you're honest.
He uses a story from Balzac to illustrate this. The story of the Rogrons and Pierrette. And I want to spend some time on this because when I read the summary of the story, I got angry.
It is an infuriating story. It's designed to be.
So set the scene. Who are these people?
Pierrette is a young, sweet, innocent orphan girl. She has no money, no power. She is sent to live with her aunt and uncle, the Rogrons.
And the Rogrons are?
The Rogrons are shopkeepers. They are petty, greedy, malicious, soul-dead people. They treat Pierrette like a slave. They bully her. They starve her. They emotionally torture her.
And eventually, she dies from the abuse.
She dies young, in pain, and destitute.
And the Rogrons. What happens to them?
The Rogrons inherit money. They expand their business. They live to a ripe old age, fat and wealthy, and respected by their neighbors.
Okay, so I look at that and I say, Maeterlinck, you're wrong. Wisdom didn't save Pierrette, and destiny didn't punish the Rogrons. The bad guys won.
They did.
They had the steak dinners and the soft beds. Pierrette is in the ground. Where's the justice?
This is where Maeterlinck asks you to look deeper. He says if you look for justice outside, in the material world, you will never find it. The Rogrons have the stuff. But look inside. What is the punishment of the Rogrons?
That they are the Rogrons. That feels like a cop-out. Oh, you're rich, but you're not nice.
They don't seem to care that they aren't nice.
But think about the quality of their existence. Maeterlinck describes their inner life as a gloomy prison. Because they are petty and cruel, they are incapable of feeling anything deep. They cannot love. They cannot be moved by a sunset. They cannot feel the warmth of genuine friendship. Their world is tiny, cold, and suspicious. They are trapped in the cell of their own nastiness. So it's a form of claustrophobia.
It is spiritual claustrophobia. Maeterlinck argues that he who brings sorrow with him stifles more happiness within himself than in the man he overwhelms.
Say that again.
He who brings sorrow with him stifles more happiness within himself than in the man he overwhelms. By crushing Pierrette, the Rogrons destroyed their own capacity for joy. They cemented the walls of their prison.
And Pierrette? She's dead.
She is. But in her short life, even amidst the suffering, she had access to spiritual joys the Rogrons couldn't imagine. She could love, she could forgive, she had an inner vastness. Maeterlinck argues that her life, measured by the quality of consciousness, was infinitely superior to the Rogron's.
It's a hard sell for the modern mind because we are so materialistic. We think, I'd rather be rich and shallow than deep and dead.
We do think that, but Maeterlinck challenges it. He asks, is a life of 60 years of numbness actually better than 20 years of vibrant, feeling life? He believes that justice is physics.
Spiritual physics.
Spiritual physics. You cannot have a beautiful inner life if your outer actions are ugly. It is mechanically impossible.
So the punishment isn't a lightning bolt, it's the shrinking of the soul.
Exactly. Vice is a shrinking agent. Virtue is an expanding agent. That is the only justice we are guaranteed.
Let's test this theory against history. Because it's one thing to analyze characters in a novel, but what about real people? Maeterlinck brings up the French Revolution, specifically King Louis XVI.
This is a fascinating case study because if anyone looks like a victim of big destiny, it's Louis XVI.
Absolutely.
He was born a king when the world was turning against kings. The tidal wave of history, the revolution crashed down on him. He lost his head. It feels inevitable.
But Maeterlinck zooms in on one specific event, the flight to Varennes. This was the moment the king and queen tried to escape Paris in disguise to get to the loyalist army.
A huge moment.
If they make it, they might retake the country. No guillotine.
The stakes were absolute. Life or death.
So what happened? Did a bridge collapse? Did lightning strike the carriage? What was the destiny that stopped them?
No, Louis happens. Maeterlinck breaks down the timeline, and the escape failed because of a series of microscopic human errors. First, the king insisted on a specific carriage, the Berline.
Which is huge.
It was a massive luxury vehicle. It was slow. It drew attention. A wise man intent on survival would have taken two fast, separate, nondescript wagons.
But Louis wanted comfort.
He wanted comfort, then he stopped to eat.
You're kidding.
He treated it like a royal procession. They stopped for a leisurely picnic. They fell hours behind schedule. So the troops waiting for them at the rendezvous point just gave up and left because they were so late.
And then the kicker, the window.
Yes. They are in a town, they are in danger, and Louis XVI, bored or curious, physically sticks his head out of the carriage window to get some fresh air. And a postmaster recognizes him from his face on the coin.
He literally stuck his neck out.
He did. Maeterlinck's point is that we look at the French Revolution and say, fate destroyed him. But if you look closely, you see a man who is indecisive, sluggish, and prioritized comfort over survival. The fatality wasn't an iron wall, it was a stumbling block. A stronger man, a Napoleon, or even just a man of common sense, would have pushed right through it.
So the event took the shape of his weakness.
There is a quote in the book that I think defines his whole philosophy. Misfortune, like water, espouses the form of the vase that contains it.
I love that imagery. The event is the water.
Yeah.
The soul is the vase.
Louis VI was a cracked, shallow vase. The water leaked out and drowned him. But Maeterlinck gives us the counterexamples, the ideal vases. He looks at the Stoics, Antoninus Pius and Marcus Aurelius.
Antoninus Pius, I feel like he's the forgotten Roman emperor, but Maeterlinck loves him.
He loves him because he was boringly good. He wasn't a conqueror, he was a caretaker. And there is this beautiful detail about his death. He is lying on his deathbed. The empire is around him. The guards are changing shift. The captain comes in to ask for the password for the night watch.
And the dying emperor whispers,
Equanimitas.
which means
Evenness of mind.
wow, that is a flex. To have your final word, your password for death, be chill out.
It shows that his soul had taken the shape of peace. So when death, the ultimate external destiny, poured in, it didn't create panic or terror, it created equanimity.
And then there's Paulus Emilius. This story actually broke my heart a little.
It is devastating. Paulus Emilius was a Roman general who won a massive war against Macedonia. He returns to Rome for his triumph, the biggest parade of his life, the absolute pinnacle of his career.
And in the days surrounding this parade, his two sons die, his only heirs. The future of his family line is wiped out.
Most men would be crushed. They would curse the gods. They would say, I gave you everything and you took my sons. It would be a tragedy of bitterness.
But Paulus Emilius does something else. He gives a speech to the people.
He does. He tells them, I have always feared fortune. I know that luck always turns. We had such a run of victories in this war. Everything went perfect. I was terrified that the inevitable bad luck would fall on Rome itself, that the city would suffer a plague or a defeat.
And then he pivots.
He says, but now the blow has fallen on me. My sons are dead, but Rome is safe. I have paid the price for the city's luck. The gods have balanced the books on my back.
Wow. He reframed the death of his children as a patriotic sacrifice.
He gave the event a noble shape. The water of misfortune poured into his soul, and because his soul was a vase of patriotism and stoicism, the event became a noble sacrifice instead of a senseless tragedy.
It's incredible.
The external destiny was the same as it would be for anyone else, dead kids, but the moral destiny was heroic.
It really emphasizes that we have creative control over the meaning of our lives, even if we don't control the plot points. We are the editors, if not the writers.
That is a beautiful way to put it. We edit the footage.
I want to pivot to something that I think will resonate or maybe irritate a lot of listeners. We've talked about tragedy, but Maeterlinck has a very strong stance on happiness. And it's not just try to be happy. He thinks it's our duty to be happy.
Yes. This is where he breaks from a lot of religious tradition, particularly the Catholic tradition he grew up in. He rejects what he calls the parasitic virtues.
Parasitic virtues. That sounds like a grunge band. What does he mean by that?
He means the idea that suffering is holy. The idea that by denying yourself, by being miserable, by starving yourself, you are somehow pleasing God or helping the world. Maeterlinck says, no, you cannot help others if you are spiritually bankrupt. He says, before giving, let us try to acquire.
He uses the lighthouse analogy here. And I have to admit, my initial reaction to this was, this sounds incredibly selfish.
Let's walk through it. Imagine you are the keeper of a lighthouse on a dangerous coast.
Right.
You have a supply of oil that keeps the great lamp burning. The beam cuts through the storm and saves hundreds of ships every year. But you live near a village of poor people. They are cold. Their cottages are dark. They come to your door begging for oil. Please, they say, give us a little oil for our lamps. Give us oil for our heaters.
And the nice thing to do, the self-sacrificing thing, is to give it to them.
Right. If you are a martyr, you give away the oil. You pour it out into their little cups. And maybe they are warm for an hour. But what happens to the lighthouse?
The lamp goes out.
The lamp goes out. The ships crash on the rocks. Hundreds die. And eventually the villagers die too because the supplies stop coming.
So the argument is, do not give away the oil. Give them the light.
Exactly. You keep your lamp burning bright. That is your first duty. Your happiness, your wisdom, your stability, that is the light that guides others. If you dismantle your own mental health to patch up someone else's momentary crisis, you are diminishing your capacity to do good in the long run.
So a miserable social worker is a bad social worker. A burnt-out parent is a bad parent.
Precisely. You have to maintain the source of your energy. Maeterlinck argues that men should live by each other's happiness, not each other's misery. He quotes John Ruskin on this. The goal is to be a radiator of joy and stability.
This leads to his critique of what he calls the useless sacrifice. He says dying for a cause is easier than living for it.
That's a hard truth, isn't it? It is dramatic to jump in front of a bus. It is cinematic to be a martyr. But Maeterlinck says that for most of us, everyday wisdom is about living. It's about the 30 or 40 years of daily patience, kindness, and cheerfulness that is much harder than one moment of glorious death.
I guess it's the difference between the soldier who charges a machine gun nest and the soldier who stands watch in the rain for 6 months without complaining.
And Maeterlinck prizes the standing watch. He does make exceptions, of course. He talks about Antigone.
The Greek heroine?
Right. She buries her brother against the king's law, knowing she will be executed. Maeterlinck calls this the heroic sacrifice. He says it is justified because she had to choose between the happiness of others, her brother's peace, and her own life. But he warns us, don't fetishize this. Don't go looking for opportunities to die. We should look for opportunities to live well.
Speaking of living well, let's talk about the humble life. Because we live in a culture, especially now with social media, where a good life means a big life. You need to travel to Bali, you need 1 million followers, you need main character energy, Maeterlinck says. Actually, you don't need any of that.
He is the anti-influencer. He challenges the idea that adventure happens geographically. He references Balzac again, specifically a story called The Cure of Tours. It's about these elderly priests and spinsters living in a boring provincial town. Nothing happens. They argue over rent. They gossip about who is coming to dinner.
Sounds like the most boring reality show ever produced.
But Maeterlinck says, look closer. Their lives contain just as much passion, intrigue, jealousy, and energy as the court of Louis XIV. It's just on a smaller stage. The human soul is the same size, whether it's in a palace or a parsonage. The physics of emotion are identical.
And he brings up the ultimate example of this, Emily Bronte.
Yes, think about Emily Bronte. She lived in a parsonage on the moors in Yorkshire. She barely traveled. She didn't have a bustling social life. She wasn't posting stories from a yacht in the Mediterranean, and yet she wrote Wuthering Heights.
Which is one of the most passionate, violent, profound books about the human soul ever written. It's elemental.
Where did she get that? She didn't get it from experiences in the modern sense. She didn't get it from a gap year.
She got it from looking out the window.
She got it from her active consciousness. She watched her own soul. She watched the few people around her. Maeterlinck argues that a sage can find the infinite in a quiet room. He says, to act is to annex to our thoughts vaster fields of experience.
That is a great phrase. To act is to annex to our thoughts. So you can conquer the world without leaving your chair.
If you sit in a chair and think deeply about love or justice or death, you have traveled further than someone who flies around the world taking selfies but never thinks about anything. The horizon isn't how far you can see physically, it's how deep you can look internally.
That is actually very comforting for those of us who feel the FOMO. It validates the inner life. It says that the drama of the soul is the real drama.
Which brings us to the biggest drama of all, love. We can't do a deep dive on wisdom without talking about love, and Maeterlinck connects the two directly.
He says love is a method of consciousness. I like that definition. It's functional.
It is. When we love, we become more aware, we notice things, we feel more. But he also tackles the thing we are all terrified of, disillusionment. Getting your heart broken, finding out the person you adore is actually kind of a jerk. Or just ordinary.
Yeah. Usually we treat that as a tragedy. We cry, we drink wine, we say love is a lie. Maeterlinck has a very different spin on this. He calls disillusionment the first smile of truth.
The first smile of truth. It's such a provocative phrase. He argues that if you are disappointed, it means you were living in a dream. You were projecting a fantasy onto a real person.
Yeah.
You fell in love with a movie in your head, not the human being in front of you.
So when the fantasy breaks,
you are finally meeting reality. And Maeterlinck insists that reality is always better than a false dream, even if it hurts. Because now you are dealing with the truth. And wisdom feeds on truth. You can't love a lie. You can only love a reality. So disillusionment is the beginning of real love.
That's tough love, but I get it. He also has a tough love message about finding a great love. We all want to find the perfect partner. We want a soulmate who is noble and kind and brilliant and understands us perfectly.
And Maeterlinck asks, are you noble and kind and brilliant? He says, if you are not perfect, that being will never suffice. Basically, you attract what you are. If you want a deep, profound love, you need to be a deep, profound person. You can't be shallow and petty and expect to have a romance like the Brownings, a meeting of minds.
He uses the cup analogy here, which I think sums up the whole book perfectly.
It really does. He says we all dip our cup into the river of life. The river is the same for everyone. It flows with the same water events, joys, sorrows, love, death. But the difference is the cup we bring.
Some people bring a thimble. Some people bring a bucket.
Exactly. If you bring a tiny, dirty cup, a narrow, bitter soul, you will only get a tiny, dirty sip of life. Even if you are standing in the middle of a glorious ocean, the ocean can't force itself into a thimble.
But if you bring a vast, pure vessel,
you drink deeply. You find meaning in everything. You find joy in the humble life. You find wisdom in tragedy. So Maeterlinck's final advice is, don't envy the people standing next to you. Don't shout at the river. Work on your cup.
Work on your cup.
Expand your consciousness. Polish your lamp. That is the only thing within your control.
Man, work on your cup. That's going to stick with me. So let's recap. Destiny isn't a monster. It's just the raw material.
Right.
We can't control the rock falling, but we can control whether our soul is a vase that holds the sorrow nobly. Justice's internal vice shrinks you. Virtue expands you. Happiness is a duty. Keep your oil so you can keep shining. And you don't need a plane ticket to have a great destiny. You just need a great consciousness.
That is a brilliant summary. You've got the Maeterlinck vibe down.
I'm feeling very wise right now. But we have to wrap this up, but I want to end with a thought experiment.
Yeah.
Because Maeterlinck ends the book on a note of a death. And I think we need to unpack it because it fixes a math error we all make.
Let's do the Maeterlinckian experiment.
Okay. So we tend to judge a life by how it ends. We look at a biography, and if the last chapter is sad, we say the whole book was sad.
Right. Take Socrates. Or Joan of Arc. Or even a relative who died of a painful disease. We look at the suffering at the end and we say, what a tragedy. What a sad destiny.
But Maeterlinck says this is bad math.
It's terrible math. Let's look at Socrates. He lived to be 70. For decades, he walked around Athens, he talked to his friends, he drank wine, he thought brilliant thoughts, he laughed, he loved wisdom. He had a magnificent, happy inner life for, 25,000 days?
Right. A whole life.
Wow.
And then he spent maybe 30 days in prison and drank hemlock.
And we let those 30 days erase the 25,000 days? We call him a tragic figure.
Wow. Yeah.
Maeterlinck asks, why does the moment of death outweigh a lifetime of conscious happiness? If Socrates had died in his sleep of a heart attack, would his wisdom be less? Would his life be more successful?
No. The content of the life is the same.
Exactly. So the thought experiment is this. Imagine you stopped judging your life by the death at the end. Imagine you judged death by the life that preceded it.
So if you've built a massive, sturdy, golden cup of a soul,
then death is just the last thing you dip into the river. It's just one more event. It is a big event, sure, but it doesn't retroactively ruin the happiness you had. It cannot unwrite the wisdom you acquired. Maeterlinck asks us to consider that the tragedy of a bad end is an illusion, that a single moment of darkness cannot extinguish a lifetime of light.
that is a comforting thought. It takes the pressure off the finale. It puts the focus back on the scene we're acting in right now.
Precisely. Polish the lamp today, expand the cup today. That's all there is.
I think that's the perfect place to leave it. Thank you for helping us unpack this density, my friend.
Always a pleasure to swim in the river with you.
And to you listening, keep polishing your lamp. We'll see you in the next deep dive.